Yoba, what's up and what's happening? And welcome back to another episode of
It's the Yoba series
with me, Chris Harding. In today's very short episode, I'm going to be talking about calories, calorie-controlled diets, what the controversy is around calorie-controlled diets, and do they work for you or any individual, and just in general whether or not to use calorie counting as a tool for you to either put on healthy amounts of weight or to lose weight. Okay, play the intro.
Come on!
So guys, to start off, why did we originally start to use calorie counting or calorie controlled diets? In the simplest way possible, calorie controlled diets or counting calories are one way to be able to control the amount that you intake through your food. Calories are a form of energy, and when we consume food, we consume a certain number of calories. However, there have been many diets that have been created through counting calories. And mainly, these diets have been created for people to be able to lose weight. At first glance, counting calories looks like a fantastic idea, and doing a calorie counted diet possibly might be something that an individual would look at. However, calorie counting doesn't always work for each individual. This is mainly probably due to the fact that everyone has a different lifestyle. People can sometimes be more active or more sedentary than others, and that goes a long way to any diet or calorie restricted diet. And our lifestyles and lifestyle choices have a massive impact on the diets that we choose to follow. I would hazard a guess that calorie controlled diets came around because of the numeracy involved, that you can actually count the amount that you might possibly need in terms of how many calories you might need per day, and also that there would be a restriction or a deficit to those calories that you can consume per day, and that's where most calorie diets would originally have stemmed from. Are calories a good way to control your weight? Yes and no. This is actually a very broad question and doesn't necessarily have one straight answer. In some regards, yes, calorie-controlled diets definitely can help people lose weight. But most of the time, I would say that calorie-controlled diets aren't kind of correctly worked out for each individual. Let's hypothetically say that you have an individual such as a 30-year-old man who's quite active and has a relatively varied and balanced diet. However, this individual wants to lose a few kilograms or a few pounds, and by wanting to lose that weight, he's going to start a calorie-controlled diet. Now, where that individual can go wrong is that they can actually miscalculate the amount of food they need. If they have a very active lifestyle and possibly also just an active general life, they're going to be expending quite a lot of calories. And therefore, if you're over-consuming or under-consuming the calories that you need, then you're not necessarily going to see any positive results with counting calories. On the flip side to that, you can actually have some really good results when you work out your calorie intake needs correctly. Your calorie intake needs are based around your BMR, which is your basal metabolic rate, and then normally times by the amount of activity that you do. Once you've worked out your BMR, your basal metabolic rate, you then roughly have to add a number of calories, which there's a separate video for it, which I'll link above in the screen, which helps you to assess how many calories you will need per day. I have personally always used calorie controlled dieting or calorie counting in order to lose weight or lose body fat. For that's whether I'm going on holiday or if I just want to feel like I'm in slightly better shape. However, this does not necessarily work for everyone, and the reason being is because calorie counting can actually be really fucking boring. However, I think it sits with the individual on what they want to do. Whether counting calories is something that they're happy to do in their day-to-day activity, it's definitely going to help an individual to control their diet to some degree. And on the other hand, for people who just feel like counting calories on, recording it on a piece of paper or recording it via an app such as MyFitnessPal is just really boring and mundane, then find something else that works for you. Why do calories have a bad reputation for not working to lose weight? I think in recent years, calories have kind of got a bad press, and I do understand why. There are some research journals and magazines and also people coming out on social media to say that calorie counting just doesn't work for anyone at all. And I'm not really here to necessarily argue that as true or as false. However, the one thing that I would say is that calorie counting does work for some individuals who actually want to track their nutrient intake. And I'd also argue that research studies and scientific journals often are looking at a general population of people to see whether if calorie counting does actually work for everybody or if it doesn't work for anybody. And with all scientific research studies, you need people to be able to conduct those studies successfully. For example, you might have a group of people that do a calorie controlled diet. You might have a group of people that do a ketogenic diet. You might have a group of people that do an intermittent fasting diet. And you also might have a group of people who don't do anything but just try to diet on their own. And the research will come out with the best answer. I'm not necessarily here to say that there is an answer. What I am here to say is that when you look at general population, the answers are always going to be quite different. However, what I really feel and what I do preach is that each individual person needs to find a way in which to lose weight successfully. Therefore, I don't really feel that beating down on the calorie counting tool or calorie counting diet is necessarily the right thing, because it will help some people. And another point is that even if you are on a calorie counting diet or a calorie deficit diet, you are actually being responsible for your intake to some degree. And because you are being responsible to that degree, you are at least keeping that accountability relevant to you as an individual. Does medical science back a calorie-controlled or restricted diet? From my perspective, there are two trains of thought, and the first is from medical science research. And I would probably say that they probably lean more towards the negative side of calorie counting. The reason I think this is because their research shows that for the general population of people, most people don't respond well to a calorie-controlled diet. However, the one thing with this is that giving each individual person the same calorie controlled diet that isn't individualized to them is not necessarily going to work at all anyway. For example, if you gave someone a 1500 calorie diet and you didn't actually know how many calories they roughly need per day, it's going to be very difficult for their bodies to adjust. So they might lose weight, but the weight might be the wrong type of weight, such as sort of muscle mass, which means that you're really keeping body fat and dropping muscle mass because you're actually underfeeding your body, or you're slightly malnourished because you're not having the amount of macronutrients and also calories that you need. There is also research to suggest that over the decades, our calorie intake hasn't really changed. And therefore, medical science would probably say that from that research, if calories haven't changed in the amount that we're consuming decade by decade, then why are we as nations, especially Western nations, getting bigger and bigger? And to that question, I don't actually have the answer, but neither do they. However, I would always support an individual person looking at a calorie controlled diet or a completely different diet that suits them. That's the most important thing with dieting, I feel, that if you have a diet that suits you and that works with you and your lifestyle, and if you continue with it for long enough, it most probably will work for you. What does the fitness industry think about calorie controlled diets? This is the second train of thought, and this is where it can get a little bit more confusing. The fitness industry are quite keen still with calorie controlled diets, and I think that is because people who are in the fitness industry, you can have influencers on social media websites, you can have, movie stars, music stars who want to go on a certain type of diet, and because they are from that industry, in terms of the fitness industry, they do look at calorie controlled diets in a more specific way. So they are literally looking at their diet as an individual. They're not following the masses. They're not following general population. They're saying that they're obviously sticking to quite a strict routine and that they're training for a purpose and that their food has to mirror that. It has to be a reflection of what they do. So this is kind of completely backwards because you've got one party sort of saying that no, calorie controlled diets don't work. And on the other side, you have the fitness industry who are saying that actually calorie controlled diets do work, and if I wasn't controlling the amount that I was having, either in terms of calories or grams of macronutrients, which are your fats, proteins and carbohydrates, I'm actually not going to be in the shape that I want to be or possibly need to be with the job that I have. For me as an individual, I'm a personal trainer and I'm also a physiotherapist, and so I like to personally keep in shape. I feel that keeping in shape and keeping in good shape reflects my business. So from that point of view, I can understand why fitness individuals want to be able to track what they do very precisely. However, on the other hand, we're not all fitness gurus. We don't want to be fitness gurus. We want to be just healthy. We want to be well balanced and can have the things that we enjoy, the things that we like to eat, such as like snacks and treats and things like that. But we do want to be able to improve, I feel, as a general population. Most people do want to improve. People do want to push forward with their diet and also their exercise and lifestyle. So it really is a mixed bag. However, I do feel from both camps, from the medical science research camp and also from the fitness industry camp, there is room for calorie controlled diets or calorie counting. Does that necessarily mean that you need to do it forever? No. Does it mean that you could do it for 4 to 6 weeks? Yes. Do I feel that having a calorie controlled diet is actually going to help you shape your nutritional intake in a better way? Yes. But I do feel nonetheless that calorie controlled diets are for the individual and they don't work for everybody. However, I do feel that calorie counting does need to be for the individual and to suit their lifestyle. Can you use calorie counting whilst on the keto or intermittent fasting diet? Yeah, absolutely. Of course you can. It's actually probably more beneficial to use calorie counting with something else, such as a ketogenic diet or an intermittent fasting diet. And actually, all three of those things kind of do interlink because you can look at a more reduced carbohydrate diet, which is really what the keto diet is implementing. And also alongside that, you can actually look at the time windows in which you're consuming your meals. Where does calorie counting fit in? Well, it can fit in to be able to prepare your meals, and you need to know, especially if you're on the keto diet, you need to know how many grams of carbohydrate, protein and fats you're intaking, because you're going to be taking on less carbohydrates per day and less overall grams of carbohydrates per meal. You need to be looking at the types of macros that you're going to be consuming. Are you going to be having a more meat and dairy based diet, Or are you going to try and stick to a vegetarian diet? Are you going to cut out some meats because they potentially have more fat? Or are you going to try and stick to the leaner, whiter meats such as chicken and fish? You also will need to start looking at the types of carbohydrates that you're going to consume. And as a piece of advice, I would strongly suggest start looking at more fiber-based carbohydrates. So as an overall, yes, ketogenic diets and intermittent fasting and also calorie counting can absolutely go hand in hand and can really help the individual to not only lose weight, but look like you're in fantastic shape, if I'm completely honest. Again, as long as you have your macronutrients and the amount that you need per day correct for you as an individual. Where I think calories belong in your life. I don't necessarily think that calories belong in anybody's life or everybody's life, but what I do feel is that calorie counting is a good way to be able to keep tabs on your intake and actually what you're doing. It's very easy to be following a specific diet, and if you don't have a tool in which to help guide you, you can quite easily sort of come away from that diet and without meaning to start to sabotage it. You might say that, oh, I'm not going to use calories as a tool, but I am going to use grams, and I'm going to be able to track the grams of macros that I need per day so that I can get a rough estimate of how much I need to intake per day. And that is absolutely fine. But again, at the same time, if you're going to be working out the grams of macros that you need per day, calorie counting can actually help you get there. It can actually help you find out or discover how many grams of macros you need. I would say, however, and forgive me for repeating myself, but I would say, however, if you are going to do a macronutrient tracking diet or a calorie tracking diet, that you do it from an individual stance. You're not following anybody else's routine or regime. You're following it on your own, and you're going to have to do a little bit of research. And my video, which I'll link again up here, will help you. To summarize, I'm going to give you my own personal perspective as a summary. For me, like I said before, I do actually use calorie counting as a tool to be able to understand what types of macros I need in my diet and how much I need in my diet per day. However, I have actually come away from calorie counting now for probably about a year because I actually got to the point where I got so used to judging the amount that I need per day in terms of my protein, carbohydrate, and fat intake that I've actually kept in really good shape and really healthy and feeling very well without actually having to use calorie counting as an aid or as a tool. However, I do believe that I wouldn't have actually been able to get to the point I'm at now with my lifestyle and with my dietary balance without calorie counting as a kind of guideline to help me at the beginning stages of my own personal diet. I don't think that calorie counting is for everyone. I think it's something that you either do or don't do, and you should not feel that you absolutely have to do calorie counting or macro tracking or anything like that. Intermittent fasting and ketogenic diets and diets that kind of surround themselves around those two types of diets tend to be very, very successful and also very healthy for you and quite a natural way to be able to lose weight. The last thing that I would say, and one of the things that I say to my clients when I'm working with them as a personal trainer, is don't look to lose weight quickly. If you're losing weight quickly, there's something going wrong. You want your weight loss to be over a period of time, and you want that time to really be attached to a goal so that you don't lose sight of the goal, but you also keep yourself within a certain time scale. And again, if you are not dropping any weight, then of course the diet that you're on isn't working for you. But there are always going to be other options and other alternatives. But if you are losing weight too quickly, that means you're doing something wrong. And the reason I believe that dropping weight quickly is wrong is because losing weight is a process, and it's a process that should really take time. And the reason it takes time is because you want your body to be in equilibrium with you as you are losing that weight. Yes, of course, it's great to lose 2 to 3, maybe even 5 pounds in a week. That's absolutely fine. But to expect that type of weight loss every single week is not necessarily a healthy thing. So I hope you found this video insightful and useful for you to begin your dieting journey. Whether you do want to do calorie counting or don't want to do calorie counting, always remember, be fit, be healthy, and of course, be a boss bear.
It's the Yo Bossy Wish.